Hey y'all, darlacansell, real estate agent in South Louisiana with Real Broker. And it is a great day, any day that it is a closing day. I absolutely love closing days because it means that I'm representing either the buyers or the sellers, and pretty soon they're going to own either their own land or their own house. So this one is super special today because I represent a young first-time home buyer couple who is buying their first ever home. I'm so excited for them on this Friday afternoon, which means they have all weekend to move into their new home. So that's always an exciting day. Talking about closing, listen, I'm sure y'all have heard me say plenty of times, it's easy to get something under contract. But getting it all the way to the closing table, that's a whole different ball game. And there are so many things that can go wrong from the time something goes under contract till it gets to the closing table where the keys are handed over and the sellers are handing over the keys to a new set of buyers. And that's always an exciting day. But listen, it's so crazy because I would say I probably close 99% of deals that go into contract. But I was talking to a guy a couple of weeks ago who has been an agent for he started about 3 months before me, so about 5.5 years. And he actually said to me, I close about 50% of my deals that go into contract. And I remember thinking, what in the actual hell are you doing? And of course I didn't say that. Listen, the most important thing for me as an agent is to be friendly, maybe not friends with them all, but friendly with our local agents, because we are all going to see each other over and over again. And if I don't represent the sellers or if I don't represent the buyers, there's going to be an agent on the other side. And for us to remain professional and on the same team is so paramount. And so in my mind, one of the most important things that an agent can do is be friendly and professional with all the other agents in the area. So of course I didn't say to him, oh my God, you only close 50% of your deals? That's insane. Listen, if you are interviewing agents and you're not sure what agent to use, ask them the simple question, what percentage of deals do you actually close that go into contract? And if that percentage isn't about 90% or higher, look for someone else. Y'all, look for someone else, because there's so many different things that can go wrong during the proceedings. But just about anything can be worked through. Anything. Absolutely anything. And so what I like to do, if I'm representing the sellers or if I represent the buyers, is just be proactive in predicting those kinds of things that can go wrong and being ahead of that game and making sure that those things get taken care of so that it gets all the way to the closing table. So for example, I know I just heard one realtor today, I was speaking to one realtor that said to me, she was representing the buyers, and the appraisal on the house came in $110,000 below the sale price. Isn't that crazy? $110,000 below the sale price. So listen, a low appraisal can kill a deal. Because if the price is $110,000 lower than what it was agreed upon, there's no way a buyer's coming up with $110,000. If it's off by a few $1,000s, that could probably happen. But y'all, $110,000, I've never heard of that. That's insane. And the listing agent on that one absolutely either dropped the ball and wasn't proactive with the appraiser to say, hey, listen, these are the comps I used to price this house. Use them, right? Appraisers are just like any of us. They have a job to do. Sometimes we feel like working harder than other days, right? And so my goal is if I'm dealing with an inspector, if I'm dealing with an appraiser, if I'm dealing with another agent, to help them out as much as humanly possible. Because the ultimate goal for all of us is to get to the closing table. So it's only our benefit to work together to get those things done, right? Now listen, if a deal is $110,000 off, there's no way they're coming back from that. There's just no way. That's a done deal. What are some other things? So talking about inspections, I know some inspectors who I would say like to talk too much. An inspector, they all have pretty much the same list of things they're looking for. So they're looking at the roof, they're looking at the foundation, they're looking at the plumbing, they're looking at the electrical. But lots of inspectors tend to think, and I wouldn't say lots, but there's a few that tend to think that they just know everything. Listen, none of us are experts in every field. There's no way we're all experts in any field at all. We might have our expertise, like an inspector, they might have had background before in electrical. They may have had background before in plumbing, but they're surely not an expert in every aspect of a house. And a lot of times inspectors like to talk too much and say things that they shouldn't say. I like an inspector who is very thorough, right? But is just going to do the job, going to present the information and not get too much in the weeds about, well, oh, if I were you, I would ask the seller for this, or I'd ask the seller for this. That's not their business. They don't know what you've already asked the sellers for to say that. So I don't like an inspector that kind of likes to put a whole lot of their 2 cents in that way. I just like them to be an investigator and find all the things that are defective with the house and then present it. Simple as that. So an inspector that just thinks that they know everything about everything, they can ruin a deal. So be real careful when you're choosing an inspector, because you want somebody who is very thorough, but isn't going to just put in too much of their own thoughts or their own opinions on what you should do in the negotiation part of it. Negotiating to get to the closing table is huge. So you want a realtor on the other side who loves negotiating, who's good at problem solving, who it doesn't bother them that it's a problem. Because listen, you've heard me say over and over again, real estate is just one problem after a problem after a problem that has to be solved to get all the way to the closing table. And there are so many things that are going to go wrong along the way. That's a given. But you want a realtor who takes it all in stride and can work through those problems. I've seen deals go south because the realtor on the other side likes to speak for their client. I do not ever speak for my client, ever. So I had a deal a couple of months ago where the buyer actually could not afford his own inspection. Now guys, I've probably closed by this time close to 365 transactions. I know what inspectors are looking for. And so we don't actually need a full-blown inspection if a buyer can't afford an inspection. And so I said to him, listen, if you can't afford an inspection, that's okay. We're going to go out to that house. We're going to look at all the things, and we're going to do the best that we can. And then we're going to present the findings to the seller, and we're going to ask them for those things if we find things wrong, right? Well, it was obvious that the air conditioner hadn't been cleaned or serviced in a very, very, very long time. That's obvious just from looking at the unit. It's obvious from looking at the inside unit. It's obvious from looking at a filthy filter that looks like it hadn't been changed in years. And so that's one thing we asked for. The front door to this particular house didn't open at all. There was no way to get that door opened. It was a house on piers, so the house had settled so much that the door was just jarred shut. That's one thing we asked for the seller to fix. There were some undermount lights in the kitchen that would not come on, so we asked the seller to make sure that those lights came on. So it was just like 4 or 5 things that we found that the buyer wanted to have fixed before closing. Now I knew that the buyer was buying that house regardless. If the seller didn't fix one single thing, the buyer was moving forward with the purchase anyway, right? But I represented the buyer, not the seller. So remember, whatever side I'm on, that's the side I'm representing. and that's the side I'm going to fight like hell for. So the buyer asked in a written response, of course, we asked for this, 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 and this to be fixed before closing. So I call up the listing agent and I say, listen, my buyer could not afford a formal inspection. He and I inspected the house ourselves, and we're sending you a response for, I think it was 5 items that we would like fixed before closing. And I kid you not, this agent said to me, well, my seller is not fixing anything because you did not have a formal inspection done. Well, number one, that's the craziest thing I ever heard. It didn't take a formal inspector to find the things wrong with the house that we found. In fact, if we had had it formally inspected, if he had been able to afford a formal inspection, way more would have been wrong with it than just that. So she should have been very thankful that we didn't have a thorough, complete formal inspection. But no, she was mad that I was sending an inspection response with buyer requests on my own accord. And that's without speaking to the seller. So she says, now speaking for the seller, she says, my seller's not fixing anything since you didn't have a formal inspection. Now remember what I told you. I represented the buyer only, and I knew that regardless of if the seller fixed anything, the buyer was moving forward with the purchase of the home regardless. Now, when you're dealing with a buyer who doesn't have the money to even afford an inspection, which costs probably $500 or $600, my goal, of course, was to make sure that the house was as perfect as humanly possible before closing. So I say to the listing agent, well, I'm presenting the request to you from the buyer. Your job is to present it to the seller and let the seller make that decision. And there's the likelihood that my buyer may walk away if the seller doesn't fix these things. Well, she presents the buyer request to the seller, and the seller agrees to fix all the things, okay? So remember this, you want an agent who is not going to speak for you, but who is going to present the information to you as either the seller or the buyer and let you make an educated decision. Now, they may tell you what they think, and that's okay. That's absolutely okay. But it is ultimately your decision as either the seller or the buyer to decide what you are going to do. So many times I've been in situations where I know darn well that the realtor is speaking for the client, okay? So that's not, in my opinion, that's not a good thing. You've hired me to represent you, not to speak for you. And I can't guess, I can't assume what you would do or what you would not do. My job is to make sure that we get to the next step, to get closer and closer and closer to the closing table, and then ultimately get to the closing table. So just remember this. Y'all, I am on Parkerson and Crowley, and I am on the side of an Acadia Parish School Board school bus. And when I tell you, I kid you not, the kids are standing up in the bus. The kids are standing up in the bus. They're not seated. They're standing up. This is insane to me. Okay, so anyway, back to this. So many things that can go south from the time it goes under contract to the closing table. So choosing a realtor who you trust and who has closed lots and lots and lots of transactions. So remember, ask the question. Don't be afraid to ask the question when you're looking to hire a realtor. What percentage of deals do you close? Okay? And if they say they don't know, listen, run. They should know. They should absolutely know. I can tell you I close probably 99% of the deals that go into contract make it to the closing table. If I closed 50% or 75%, Lord, I'd probably need to be looking for another job, okay? Because that's not a good thing. You should close most of the deals that go into contract. It's really not that difficult. It is Friday afternoon, y'all. The weather is gorgeous. Y'all have a great weekend. If there are any questions that you have real estate related, I'd love to answer your questions. Text me, call me, send me a private message. Remember this, there are no stupid questions. Ask your questions. It's the only way you're going to learn. Y'all take care and have a great day.